In the novel Natasha and Her Illegitimate Child in a Muslim Society by Dr. A. Ahmed, Dr. Hassan tries to get rid of his wife Natasha's laptop for several interconnected reasons, all rooted in fear, shame, and a desire to protect himself from exposure and scandal. To prevent the release of the stoning video, Natasha had videotaped the brutal stoning of Dr. Hassan's first wife, Siham, in Saudi Arabia. She planned to send this video to Fox News and use it as evidence in her advocacy against misogynistic practices in Muslim societies. Dr. Hassan was deeply troubled by this, fearing that the video would expose his family's shame and bring dishonor to him and his relatives, both in Canada and Sudan. He tried to stop Natasha from sending the video, but when she refused, he decided to steal her laptop and destroy it, hoping to erase the video and prevent its public release. To hide his past and protect his reputation, the video and other data on Natasha's laptop contained sensitive information about Dr. Hassan's past, including the scandal of his first wife's adultery and execution. He feared that if this information became public, it would lead to further ostracism and humiliation within the Sudanese and Muslim communities in Canada, just as he had experienced in Saudi Arabia. Influence from community and family. Dr. Hassan's Sudanese friends and his mother pressured him to stop Natasha from defaming Islam and exposing family secrets. They encouraged him to destroy any evidence that could be used against him or the community, reinforcing his decision to get rid of the laptop. Loss of trust and marital breakdown. The act of stealing and disposing of Natasha's laptop was also a manifestation of the growing mistrust and conflict in their marriage. Dr. Hassan's actions were driven by desperation to regain control over a situation that was spiraling beyond his ability to manage. Summary from the text. When Dr. Hassan failed to force his Christian wife to cancel her plan of publishing the video of his late Muslim wife, he decided to steal it from her and destroy it. On the same day, while his wife was sleeping, he woke up in the middle of the night and stole her laptop and went and threw it in Lake Ontario. He thought that by getting rid of her laptop, he had succeeded in destroying all the data that she had gathered from her visit to the Middle East along with the disgraceful video. Dr. Hassan repeatedly had been told by his Sudanese friends to stop his infidel wife from defaming Islam. They asked him to destroy those data she has in her laptop so that she would not be able to spread further lies about Muslim women. In short, Dr. Hassan's attempt to get rid of Natasha's laptop was an act of self-preservation, motivated by fear of public exposure, community pressure, and the desire to prevent further personal and familial disgrace. The incident involving Dr. Hassan stealing and disposing of Natasha's laptop has a profound and destructive impact on their marriage. Here's a detailed analysis. Impact of the laptop incident on Dr. Hassan and Natasha's marriage. 1. Breakdown of trust. Natasha's discovery that Dr. Hassan stole and destroyed her laptop is a major breach of trust. The laptop contained not only her research and advocacy materials, but also sensitive evidence, such as the video of the stoning of his first wife, that she intended to use for her activism. Dr. Hassan's action is motivated by fear, shame, and pressure from his community, but for Natasha, it is a clear sign that her husband is willing to sabotage her work and autonomy to protect himself and his reputation. 2. Escalation of marital conflict. The incident intensifies existing tensions in their marriage. Natasha is already frustrated by Dr. Hassan's inability to adapt to Canadian life, his resistance to gender equality, and his discomfort with her independence and activism. The destruction of her laptop is seen as an act of control and betrayal, pushing their relationship to a breaking point. 3. Loss of emotional and financial support. After the incident, Natasha decides to leave Dr.
Hassan.
She moves out of their apartment, writes him a letter explaining her reasons, and informs him that she will no longer support him financially or emotionally. She explicitly tells him that she will not finance his studies or be responsible for his expenses, which is significant because Dr. Hassan is dependent on her for his education and living costs. 4. Irreparable damage and separation. The laptop incident is the catalyst for Natasha's decision to end the marriage. She moves in with her brother and his wife, seeking a safer and more supportive environment for herself and her children. Dr. Hassan's actions, combined with his refusal to adapt and his susceptibility to negative influences from his community, make reconciliation impossible at this stage. 5. Symbol of deeper issues. The laptop is not just a physical object, it symbolizes Natasha's voice, agency, and mission. Dr. Hassan's attempt to silence her by destroying it reflects the broader themes of control, silencing, and the struggle for autonomy that run throughout the novel. Direct evidence from the text. She wrote a long letter to him explaining why she decided to leave him and move out of their apartment because she does not trust him anymore. In her letter, she told him that she is not going to finance his study anymore or support him in any way. Dr. Natasha finally decided to break up her relationship with her untrusted husband and leave her apartment and move to her brother's apartment. She mentioned that she put her life in an extremely high risk to collect those important data about the abuse and oppression of women in Muslim society. Dr. Hassan has become extremely outraged when he discovered that his plot of stopping his Christian wife from sending the shameful video to the Western media has flopped. But he understood he could do nothing now to alter her decision. Moreover, he became exceedingly mad when she told him she has left him for good and she is no longer going to finance his study and support him. She understood that her unexpected decisions have put him in a heap of problems. Summary table. Effects of the laptop incident. Aspect impact on marriage. Trust irrevocably broken. Natasha no longer trusts Hassan. Emotional connection severely damaged, leads to emotional withdrawal and separation. Financial/practical ties. Natasha withdraws all support, leaving Hassan isolated and financially vulnerable. Communication ends in written confrontation and physical separation. Symbolic meaning represents the silencing of Natasha's voice and the end of partnership. In summary, the laptop incident is a turning point that exposes the irreconcilable differences between Dr. Hassan and Natasha. It leads to the collapse of their marriage, the end of trust and support, and Natasha's decision to prioritize her own safety, dignity, and mission over a relationship that has become toxic and unsustainable. Dr. Hassan's next steps after separation. 1. Loss of support and isolation. After Natasha leaves him, Dr. Hassan loses her emotional and financial support. She explicitly tells him she will no longer finance his studies or support him in any way. He is left alone in their apartment, feeling abandoned and facing the consequences of his actions. 2. Seeking community and familiarity. Dr. Hassan begins to feel bored and isolated, so he seeks out the Sudanese immigrant community in Toronto for companionship and a sense of belonging. He quickly becomes part of a group of Sudanese men who reinforce traditional values and gender roles, which makes him feel more comfortable but also pulls him further away from integration into Canadian society. 3. Resistance to change and cultural adaptation. He continues to struggle with adapting to Canadian norms, especially regarding gender equality and household responsibilities. Dr. Hassan resists taking on women's work at home and is uncomfortable with Natasha's independence and Western lifestyle. 4. Influence from Sudanese friends and family. His Sudanese friends and his mother encourage him to take a second, Muslim, wife, suggesting that this would restore his honor and fulfill cultural expectations. He becomes increasingly alienated from Natasha and is influenced to consider polygamy, despite Canadian law. 5. Secret polygamous marriage. Dr. Hassan eventually enters into a secret Islamic marriage with a Muslim woman named Ilham, while still legally married to Natasha. This marriage is conducted in secret with the help of a local imam and is not registered with Canadian authorities due to the illegality of polygamy. 6. Legal trouble and arrest. During the secret wedding ceremony, Canadian police raid the event, arrest Dr. Hassan for practicing polygamy, and charge him with bigamy, a criminal offense in Canada. He is also charged with assaulting a police officer during the incident, which leads to further legal complications and a lengthy prison sentence. 7. Further alienation and downfall. Dr. Hassan's actions lead to complete social ostracism from both the Sudanese and broader Canadian communities. He loses all remaining support, faces imprisonment, and is left to deal with the consequences of his choices, including the collapse of his family and professional life. Summary table. Dr. Hassan's post-separation path. Step description. Loss of support. Natasha withdraws all emotional and financial support. Seeks Sudanese community finds companionship and validation among Sudanese immigrants. Resists adaptation, refuses to adapt to Canadian norms, clings to traditional gender roles. Influenced toward polygamy, friends and mother encourage him to take a second wife. Secret polygamous marriage, marries Ilham in secret, violating Canadian law. Arrest and legal trouble, arrested for polygamy and assault, faces prison. Complete alienation, ostracized by both communities, faces downfall and isolation. In summary, after the separation, Dr. Hassan's next steps are marked by increasing isolation, a return to traditional values, susceptibility to negative influences, illegal actions, polygamy, and eventual legal and social ruin. His inability to adapt and his choices lead to his downfall, both personally and professionally. Natasha's life after separation. 1. Immediate steps and support system. Moves out. Natasha leaves her apartment with Dr. Hassan after the laptop incident and moves in with her brother Wahid and his wife Almaz, seeking a safer and more supportive environment for herself and her children. Focus on children. She resumes a close relationship with her children, Nadia and Sammy, who have been living with her brother during her fieldwork and marriage. Natasha becomes more involved in their daily lives and education, ensuring they are raised in a loving, stable, and Christian environment. Site turn 4 fetch_file. 2. Professional and academic life. University career. Natasha secures a teaching position at the University of Toronto in the Department of Religious Studies. She is excited to teach about Islam and share her fieldwork experiences, aiming to make a significant contribution to academic discussions on women in Islam. Writing and advocacy. She continues to write and publish books and articles on the status of women in Muslim societies, using her personal experiences and research to advocate for women's rights and expose abuses. Her work gains international attention, making her a prominent and sometimes controversial figure. Site turn 4. 3. Personal growth and independence. Resilience. Natasha demonstrates resilience and independence, focusing on her career, her children, and her advocacy work. She refuses to be silenced or victimized by her past experiences or by the backlash from her activism. Faith and community. She remains active in her Christian faith, attending church and relying on her faith community for support, especially after traumatic events and threats to her safety. Site turn 4. Facing challenges and threats. Backlash and threats. Natasha faces significant backlash from the Muslim community, including legal complaints, public protests, and even threats to her life. Despite these dangers, she continues her advocacy and refuses to back down. Legal and institutional battles. She is involved in legal disputes, both defending her academic work and facing lawsuits from embassies and organizations that accuse her of defamation or misrepresentation. She successfully defends herself with evidence and legal counsel. Site turn 5. Personal loss and trauma. Family tragedy. Natasha's brother Wahid is killed while protecting her during a court appearance, a traumatic event that deeply affects her but also strengthens her resolve to continue her work. Ongoing healing. She copes with the psychological impact of past abuse, betrayal, and violence, focusing on healing and providing a stable life for her children. 6. Legacy and impact. Global influence. Natasha's books, speeches, and activism inspire women and girls around the world to question oppressive norms and seek justice. She becomes a symbol of resilience and the fight for women's rights in patriarchal societies. Continued advocacy. Despite ongoing risks, Natasha remains committed to her mission, traveling, speaking, and writing to raise awareness and advocate for change. Site turn 4 fetch_file. Summary table. Natasha's post-separation life. Aspect description. Living situation: moves in with brother and his wife. Focuses on children. Career: university professor, prolific writer and speaker on women's rights. Advocacy: continues activism despite backlash and threats. Faith: active in Christian community, draws strength from faith. Challenges: faces legal battles, public protests, threats, and personal loss. Legacy: inspires others, creates paradigm shift in discourse on women in Islam. In summary, after separating from Dr. Hassan, Natasha rebuilds her life around her children, her academic and advocacy work, and her faith. She overcomes trauma and loss, faces ongoing challenges with courage, and becomes a globally recognized voice for women's rights and justice. Natasha is sued by Arab embassies and Muslim community groups in Canada for several reasons, all connected to her outspoken activism, academic work, and undercover research on women's rights and abuses in Muslim societies. Here's a summary of the main reasons. 1. Alleged misrepresentation and fraudulent identity. Traveling under false pretenses, Natasha traveled to several Muslim countries, including Saudi Arabia, using a false religious identity and sometimes a false marital status, pretending to be a Muslim woman or a married couple to gain access to places and experiences otherwise closed to non-Muslims or single women. Visa applications. Arab embassies, especially the Saudi embassy in Ottawa, accuse her of lying on her visa applications, claiming to be Muslim and married when she was not, in order to perform Hajj and conduct fieldwork undercover. Site. 2. Defamation and damage to reputation. Publishing critical works. Natasha publishes books, articles, and gives public speeches that expose and criticize misogynistic practices in Muslim societies, including polygamy, female genital mutilation, child marriage, and honor-based violence. Accusations of fabrication. Muslim organizations and embassies claim that Natasha fabricated stories and included false data in her academic research and publications, thereby defaming Islam and Muslim community. 3. Incitement and airing dirty laundry. Publicizing sensitive material. Natasha's release of sensitive evidence, such as the video of the stoning of Saham, and her willingness to speak openly about taboo subjects are seen as airing dirty laundry and inciting hatred or negative perceptions of Muslims in the West. Legal complaints. Muslim community groups and feminist professors file complaints with her university, accusing her of violating research ethics, spreading anti-Islamic propaganda, and endangering community cohesion. 4. Violation of academic and legal norms. Undercover research. She is accused of violating university and legal standards by conducting undercover research without full disclosure and by using false identities to collect data in Muslim countries. Lawsuits and institutional pressure. These accusations lead to lawsuits and institutional investigations, both at her university and in Canadian courts, often instigated or supported by embassies and Muslim organizations. Direct evidence from the text. The Islamic Council of Toronto convinced the Saudi embassy in Ottawa to take Professor Dr. Natasha Shams al-Din to court for lying in her visa application and traveling undercover to Saudi Arabia for performing the Hajj rituals when she is not a Muslim. Instead of Professor Dr. Natasha alone, the embassy dragged her brother Wahid Muhammad Ahmed in their lawsuit and accused both of them of lying in their applications by supplying false religious identities and fake names. The lawsuit of the Saudi embassy led other Arab embassies in Ottawa to submit similar complaints against Dr. Natasha and her brother Wahid for traveling to their countries under false travel papers and fake names. Canadian Muslims have not stopped at trying to prosecute Dr. Natasha at the university and a court of law, but have pursued her inside her house and created a serious problem between her and her husband. Muslim feminists strongly condemned it and demanded that its founder should be prosecuted. Natasha has not been surprised when she came to know that Muslim women in the West, especially the feminists, condemned her movement and accused her of being a fanatic bigot and a racist. Some feminists accused her of trying to gain name and fame by being called Muslim women's liberator. Some Muslim professors in some American universities argued that Natasha is a psychologically disturbed woman and hence her movement should not be taken seriously. Summary table. Reasons for lawsuits against Natasha. Reason description. False identity/fraud, accused of lying on visa applications and using false religious/marital status. Defamation, publishing works that allegedly defame Islam and Muslim communities. Fabrication of data, accused of fabricating stories and research findings. Incitement/airing dirty laundry, publicizing sensitive material, inciting negative perceptions. Violation of academic norms, undercover research without disclosure, violating university/legal standards. In summary, Natasha is sued by Arab embassies and Muslim community groups in Canada because of her undercover research, her outspoken criticism of Islamic practices, her use of false identities to access restricted environments, and the publication of material that these groups claim is defamatory, fabricated, or damaging to the reputation of Islam and Muslim communities. 1. Lawsuits filed against Natasha. Natasha is sued by Arab embassies, notably the Saudi Embassy, and Muslim community groups in Canada. The main accusations are lying on visa applications, using false religious identity and marital status, traveling undercover to perform Hajj and conduct research, fabricating stories and data in her academic work, and defaming Islam and Muslim community. 2. University and academic investigations. Muslim feminist professors and community groups file complaints with Natasha's university, accusing her of violating research ethics and spreading anti-Islamic propaganda. The university forms an inquiry committee to investigate the allegations. Outcome: the committee finds Natasha's work to be academically sound and well documented. The complaints are dismissed, and Natasha retains her teaching position. 3. Canadian court proceedings. Natasha and her brother are taken to court by the Saudi Embassy and other Arab embassies for allegedly lying on visa applications and using false identities. She is also accused of faking a marriage to obtain a spousal visa for Dr.
Hassan.
Outcome: the court finds that Natasha and her brother legally changed their names and that religious identity is a matter of personal freedom in Canada. The court rules that visiting religious sites or conducting research is not a criminal act and that marking married on a visa application without providing a fake marriage certificate is not grounds for prosecution. The court also finds that her marriage to Dr. Hassan, though initially a mock marriage, was later consummated and resulted in a child, making the accusation of fraud irrelevant. All charges are dismissed. Natasha and her brother are found not guilty of any legal wrongdoing. 4. Aftermath and public reaction. The dismissal of the lawsuits leads to outrage among some Muslim community members who protest the court's decision. Natasha faces continued backlash, threats, and social ostracism, but is legally vindicated and continues her academic and advocacy work. Summary table. Legal outcomes. Lawsuit/complaint outcome. University research ethics complaints dismissed. Natasha's work found academically sound. Lawsuits by Arab embassies dismissed. Legal name changes and religious freedom upheld. Accusation of visa/marriage fraud dismissed. Marriage found to be legitimate. No criminal intent proven. Public and community backlash ongoing, but no legal consequences. Natasha continues her work. In summary, Natasha successfully defends herself against all legal and institutional challenges. The courts and her university uphold her academic freedom, legal rights, and personal choices, dismissing all lawsuits and complaints brought by Arab embassies and Muslim community groups in Canada. Despite ongoing social and personal risks, Natasha is legally vindicated and continues her advocacy and academic career. Context: after Natasha and her brother Wahid are acquitted in court of all charges brought by Arab embassies and Muslim community groups, there is significant outrage among some members of the Muslim community. Natasha continues to face backlash, threats, and public protests due to her activism and outspoken criticism of misogynistic practices in Muslim societies. The attack. Threats and warnings. Natasha receives an anonymous letter threatening her life if she does not stop her activism and refrain from sending the video of the stoning to the media. She reports this to the police, but they do not provide her with special protection, believing the threat is not serious. Court appearance. Despite being heavily pregnant, Natasha is required to appear in court for the trial. Her brother Wahid and friend Almaz accompany her for support. Assassination attempt. As Natasha is leaving the courtroom, supported by her brother and escorted by police, a man emerges from the crowd and fires a bullet at her from point-blank range. Brother's sacrifice. Wahid sees the shooter and quickly shields Natasha with his own body. The bullet strikes Wahid in the heart, killing him instantly. Before the attacker can fire again, a police officer shoots and wounds the assailant. Site turn 4 fetch aftermath. The assassin is identified as a Sudanese Muslim student at the University of Toronto, one of Natasha's own students, who was living with Dr. Hassan, Natasha's estranged husband, and other Sudanese men. The police investigate but are unable to link the other roommates to the plot. Natasha's collapse. Witnessing her brother's murder causes Natasha to collapse and fall into a coma. She is rushed to the hospital, where doctors perform an emergency cesarean section to save her baby. Public reaction. The attack is widely seen as a terrorist act intended to silence Natasha for her activism and criticism of Islamic practices. The police are criticized for failing to protect her despite prior warnings. Summary table. The terrorist attack on Natasha. Event details. Threats received. Anonymous letter warns Natasha to stop activism or face consequences. Court appearance. Natasha appears in court, heavily pregnant, with brother and friend. Shooting attacker fires at Natasha as she leaves court. Brother's sacrifice. Wahid shields Natasha, is killed by the bullet. Police response. Police shoot and wound the attacker. Aftermath. Natasha collapses. Emergency surgery saves her baby. Public reaction. Attack seen as terrorism. Police criticized for lack of protection. In summary, after her legal victory, Natasha is the target of a terrorist attack outside the courthouse. Her brother Wahid is killed protecting her, and Natasha survives only due to his sacrifice. The attack is a direct response to her activism and is widely condemned as an act of terrorism, highlighting the dangers faced by those who challenge entrenched systems of oppression. Here is a summary of the police and community reactions to the terrorist attack on Natasha after her trial. Police reaction. Initial dismissal of threats. Before the attack, Natasha had reported receiving an anonymous life-threatening letter to the police. However, the police did not take the threat seriously, concluding that the letter did not indicate an imminent risk to her life, and therefore did not provide her with special protection. Failure to protect. After the attack, where Natasha's brother Wahid was killed shielding her from a gunman outside the courthouse, the police faced public criticism for failing to protect Natasha, especially since she was a high-profile target and had previously reported threats. Investigation. The police quickly identified and apprehended the shooter, who was a Sudanese Muslim student at the University of Toronto and one of Natasha's own students. They also investigated his roommates, including Dr. Hassan, Natasha's estranged husband, but could not find evidence to charge them as co-conspirators. Ongoing surveillance. The police maintained surveillance on the shooter's associates, but ultimately released them due to lack of evidence. They also provided round-the-clock protection for Natasha and her family after the attack site. Community reaction. Public outrage and sympathy. The attack generated widespread shock and condemnation, especially among non-Muslim Canadians and supporters of Natasha. Many saw the attack as a terrorist act aimed at silencing her advocacy for women's rights and freedom of speech. Criticism of police. There was significant public anger directed at the police for not taking Natasha's earlier warnings seriously and for failing to prevent the attack, especially given her high-risk profile and the visible threats she faced. Muslim community response. Some members of the Muslim community were outraged by the attack and condemned it, while others continued to protest against Natasha. blaming her for inciting hatred and defaming Islam. After the attack, some Muslims in Toronto and elsewhere protested the court's decision to acquit Natasha and her brother, and some even called for further action against her. Heightened security and fear. The attack led to increased security for Natasha and her family, and her children were temporarily kept out of school for their safety. The event heightened fears about the risks faced by outspoken critics of religion. Summary table: police and community reactions. Group reaction. Police initially dismiss threat, criticized for lack of protection, investigate and arrest shooter, provide security after attack. General public outrage and sympathy for Natasha, criticism of police, see attack as terrorism. Muslim community mixed, some condemn attack, others continue protests and blame Natasha for inciting hatred. Natasha's family receive police protection, children kept out of school for safety. In summary, the police were criticized for failing to protect Natasha despite prior warnings, and the community response was a mix of outrage, sympathy, and ongoing controversy. The attack highlighted the dangers faced by activists like Natasha and the challenges of balancing free speech, community relations, and personal safety in a multicultural society. How Dr. Natasha and Dr. Hassan reconcile. 1. Separation and downfall. After the laptop incident and the exposure of Dr. Hassan's secret polygamous marriage, Natasha leaves him and their marriage collapses. Dr. Hassan faces legal trouble, social ostracism, and imprisonment. He is abandoned by his Sudanese friends and community, and Natasha refuses to visit him or support him further. Site turn 4. 2. Dr. Hassan's regret and apology. Isolated and rejected, Dr. Hassan experiences deep regret and despair. He realizes that Natasha was the only person who stood by him during his lowest moments and that he still loves her. He writes a long letter to Natasha from prison, apologizing for his actions, explaining his suffering, and asking for forgiveness. He expresses his desire to be reunited with her and their son, Wahid. 3. Natasha's reflection and decision. Natasha is initially unwilling to forgive Dr. Hassan, but her close friend Almaz encourages her to give him another chance. Natasha recognizes that she still loves Hassan and does not want her son to grow up without his father. She decides to meet with Hassan in person to determine if his apology is genuine and if he truly wants to return for the right reasons, not just because he has been abandoned by his community site. 4. The reconciliation meeting. Natasha arranges to meet Hassan in a public place, an Ethiopian restaurant, disguising herself for safety. She observes that Hassan is genuinely remorseful, miserable, and desperate for reconciliation. During their conversation, Hassan apologizes in tears and asks for forgiveness. Natasha is convinced of his sincerity and agrees to take him back as her husband. 5. Rebuilding their life together. After their meeting, Hassan leaves his old apartment and moves in with Natasha and their son. Their reunion brings joy and stability back to their family. Natasha is happy that Hassan accepts her children from previous relationships as his own, and she hopes that, with time, he will adapt to their new life and let go of his old cultural prejudices. 6. Moving forward. Natasha takes a year of maternity leave to focus on her family, while Hassan continues his studies. Their reconciliation is marked by forgiveness, mutual support, and a renewed commitment to building a life together despite their past hardships. Summary table. Steps to reconciliation. Step description. Separation. Natasha leaves Hassan after betrayal and legal trouble. Regret and apology. Hassan, isolated and remorseful, writes to Natasha seeking forgiveness. Reflection. Natasha, encouraged by friends, considers giving Hassan another chance. Meeting. They meet in public. Hassan apologizes sincerely. Natasha forgives him. Reunion. Hassan moves in with Natasha. They rebuild their family life. Moving forward. Natasha takes maternity leave. Hassan resumes studies. Family is reunited. In summary, Dr. Natasha and Dr. Hassan reconcile after a period of separation, regret, and personal growth. Hassan's heartfelt apology and Natasha's willingness to forgive allow them to reunite, rebuild their family, and move forward together as husband and wife, learning from their past mistakes and supporting each other in their new lives. Dr. A. Ahmed, their relationship undergoes several important changes, both positive and challenging. Key changes in their relationship after reconciliation. 1. Deeper forgiveness and emotional maturity. Their reunion is built on genuine apology, forgiveness, and a willingness to move beyond past betrayals. Natasha forgives Hassan after he expresses sincere regret and demonstrates vulnerability, and Hassan is grateful for her compassion and willingness to give him another chance. Both partners are more emotionally open, having confronted their own pain and the consequences of their actions. This leads to a more honest and mature emotional connection. 2. Renewed commitment to family. Natasha and Hassan recommit to raising their son Wahid together, and Hassan also accepts Natasha's other children, Nadia and Sami, as his own. This brings a sense of stability and unity to their blended family. Natasha no longer needs to hide her relationship to her children, and Hassan officially becomes their stepfather, which brings her peace of mind. 3. Mutual support and shared responsibilities. Natasha takes a year of maternity leave to focus on her family, while Hassan continues his studies. They support each other's personal and professional growth, and Natasha is happy to see Hassan making progress in his education. There is a greater sense of partnership, with both partners contributing to the household and family life, even as they continue to face external pressures. 4. Ongoing cultural and ideological tensions. Despite their reconciliation, some cultural and ideological differences persist. Hassan continues to struggle with aspects of Western life, Natasha's independence, and her Christian faith. He sometimes reverts to traditional attitudes, especially regarding gender roles and religious identity. Natasha remains hopeful that, over time, Hassan will adapt more fully to their new life and let go of old prejudices, but she recognizes that change is gradual. 5. Resilience in the face of adversity. Their relationship is now marked by resilience. Having survived separation, public scandal, and personal trauma, they are better equipped to handle future challenges together. Both Natasha and Hassan are more aware of the importance of communication, empathy, and mutual respect in maintaining their partnership. 6. Public and professional life. Natasha continues her academic and advocacy work, writing and speaking about women's rights, while Hassan works toward requalifying as a doctor in Canada. Their public and professional lives remain demanding, but they find strength in their renewed partnership. They face ongoing scrutiny and, at times, hostility from both the Muslim and broader communities, but their bond is stronger for having weathered these storms together. Summary table. Changes in Natasha and Hassan's relationship. Aspect change after reconciliation. Forgiveness and maturity. Deeper emotional honesty, mutual forgiveness and maturity. Family unity. Recommitment to raising children together. Hassan accepts all of Natasha's children. Mutual support. Shared responsibilities, support for each other's goals and healing. Cultural tensions ongoing, but handled with more patience and understanding. Resilience. Stronger partnership, better equipped to face adversity. Public/professional life. Continue advocacy and studies, facing external pressures as a team. In summary, after getting back together, Natasha and Hassan's relationship is transformed by forgiveness, renewed commitment, and greater emotional depth. While some cultural and ideological challenges remain, they approach them with more empathy and resilience, building a partnership that is stronger and more supportive than before. When Dr. Hassan learns through his Sudanese friends that Dr. Natasha's two children, Nadia and Sami, were born through incest, Nadia by her brother Wahid and Sami by her father Sheikh Yasser, his reaction is one of shock, repulsion, and deepening resentment. Dr. Hassan's reactions. Disbelief and repulsion. Dr. Hassan is initially unable to digest the incredible abominable information that Natasha's children were fathered through incest by her brother and her biological father. He is deeply disturbed and repulsed by the revelation, which increases his feelings of disgust and alienation from Natasha. moral and religious judgment. He interprets this information through a religious and cultural lens, telling Natasha that if her Christian religion were true, her God would not have allowed her to have sex with her own brother and father. He uses stories from Islamic tradition to argue that, in Islam, such incest would be divinely prevented, reinforcing his sense of moral superiority and justifying his anger. 3. Blame and resentment. Hassan blames Natasha for her past, even though the incest was unwitting and she was a victim of abuse. He becomes more resentful toward her, and this resentment is compounded by the influence of his Sudanese friends, who feed him negative stories and encourage his hostility. Increased hatred toward Christianity. The revelation intensifies Hassan's pre-existing antipathy toward Christianity. He argues that Natasha's faith must be false if it permits such abominations, and he uses this as further justification for distancing himself from her and her children. Emotional withdrawal and marital breakdown. Hassan's reaction leads to further emotional withdrawal from Natasha. He stops talking to her, refuses to join her in bed, and becomes increasingly isolated within the marriage. This deepens the rift between them and contributes to the eventual breakdown of their relationship. Direct evidence from the novel. Dr. Hassan could not digest the incredible abominable information of the sister who got married and had sex with her own brother, and she had also got raped by her biological father. Such information increased his repulsion and hatred towards Christianity. He told his wife that if her Christian religion is true, then her God would not have allowed her to have sex with her own brother and father. The problem between Dr. Natasha and her husband reached its peak when she agreed to send the video of the stoning of his ex-wife to the Fox News channel in the States. Summary table. Dr. Hassan's reactions. Reaction description. Disbelief/repulsion, shocked and disgusted by the incestuous origins of Natasha's children. Moral judgment, uses religious arguments to condemn Natasha and her faith. Blame/resentment, blames Natasha for her past, despite her being a victim. Intensified hatred, grows more hostile toward Christianity and Natasha's background. Emotional withdrawal, withdraws from Natasha, leading to further marital breakdown. In summary, Dr. Hassan's reaction is a mix of shock, moral condemnation, and deepening resentment, which further damages his relationship with Natasha and contributes to their estrangement. Natasha's response to Dr. Hassan's reaction, after he learns from his Sudanese friends that her children were born through incest by her father and brother, is a mix of pain, resilience, and moral clarity. 1. Emotional pain and disappointment. Natasha is deeply hurt by Hassan's reaction, especially his repulsion, blame, and moral condemnation. She recognizes that he is judging her for traumas and abuses that were forced upon her, not choices she made. She feels the weight of being blamed for her own victimization and is disappointed that Hassan, who himself has suffered from social stigma and betrayal, cannot show her empathy or understanding. 2. Refusal to accept blame. Natasha does not accept Hassan's attempts to blame her or her Christian faith for the incestuous circumstances of her children's births. She knows she was a victim of abuse and that her children are innocent. She stands firm in her conviction that neither she nor her children should be shamed or held responsible for the crimes committed against her. 3. Moral and ethical clarity. Natasha insists on the innocence of her children and refuses to consider abortion, even when society debates the morality of raising children born of incest. She argues that the baby is innocent and aborting it would be a murder, and she will not kill her child to satisfy the moral conscience of others. She maintains her dignity and self-worth, even as she is ostracized and judged by those around her. 4. Focus on healing and moving forward. Rather than internalizing Hassan's condemnation, Natasha chooses to focus on healing, raising her children, and continuing her advocacy for women's rights. She relies on her own resilience and the support of her close friends and family, especially her brother Wahid and Almaz, to move forward with her life. 5. Continued advocacy and independence. Natasha channels her pain into her work, writing and speaking out about the realities of abuse, misogyny, and the culture of shame. She refuses to be silenced or defined by the stigma attached to her past. Her response to Hassan's reaction is ultimately one of strength. She does not allow his judgment to derail her mission or her sense of self. In summary, Natasha responds to Hassan's reaction with pain, but also with resilience and clarity. She refuses to accept blame for her victimization, stands by the innocence of her children, and continues to pursue healing, justice, and advocacy, regardless of the judgment or rejection she faces from Hassan or society. Dr. Hassan, after learning from his Sudanese friends about the incestuous origins of Natasha's children, tries to argue, using religious and cultural stories, that God would never allow a brother or father to have sex with his sister or daughter. Here's how the story unfolds and Natasha's response. Dr. Hassan's story. Dr. Hassan tells Natasha a story from Islamic tradition to support his belief that God would not permit incest, even unknowingly. The story. Hassan recounts the tale of an innocent Muslim girl who was kidnapped as a baby by a bad woman and raised as a prostitute. When she grew up, she met her brother, whom she had not seen since childhood, in the brothel. Both wanted to have sex, not knowing they were siblings. The brother tried several times to have sex with her, but his penis remained cold, as if it weren't part of his body. He was able to have sex with other prostitutes in the brothel, but not with his own sister. Eventually, the brother investigated and discovered through a siblingship DNA test that the girl was his sister. He then rescued her from the brothel. Hassan uses this story to argue that Allah would not allow a brother and sister to have sex, even if they were unaware of their relationship, because God would intervene and prevent the act from happening. He adds another story. Hassan also mentions a Muslim man who unknowingly married his own mother, and a similar miracle happened. God prevented them from consummating the marriage. Moral point. Hassan's point is that, in Islam, God would not allow such incestuous acts to occur, and that the fact Natasha's children were born through incest is proof, to him, that her Christian faith is false and that God did not intervene to prevent the sin. Natasha's response. Natasha responds to Hassan's story with a mix of disbelief, pain, and moral clarity. Refusal to accept the argument. Natasha does not accept Hassan's religious reasoning. She points out that she was a victim of abuse and that her children are innocent. She refuses to accept blame for what happened to her, and she does not believe that her faith or her worth as a person should be judged by the circumstances of her victimization. Biblical counterexamples. Natasha tries to counter Hassan's argument by referencing stories from the Bible, such as Abraham marrying his half-sister Sarah and David's son Absalom having sex with his sister Tamar. However, Hassan uses these examples to reinforce his own argument, claiming that even in Christianity, such acts are condemned, and that God would prevent them if the religion were true. Emotional impact. Natasha is deeply hurt by Hassan's lack of empathy and his willingness to judge her for traumas she did not choose. She is disappointed that he cannot see her as a survivor and instead uses her pain to justify his own prejudices, standing her ground. Despite Hassan's condemnation, Natasha stands firm in her belief that she and her children are innocent and that her life should not be defined by the abuse she suffered. She refuses to let Hassan's judgment or religious arguments undermine her dignity or her mission. In summary, Dr. Hassan narrates a story from Islamic tradition to argue that God would never allow incest between siblings or between a father and daughter, even unknowingly. Natasha responds by refusing to accept blame or shame for her victimization, referencing biblical stories, and standing firm in her belief in her own and her children's innocence, despite Hassan's condemnation and lack of empathy. Dr. Hassan later refuses to believe that he and Dr. Natasha are half-brother and half-sister, even after DNA evidence confirms it, because of a combination of emotional denial, cultural conditioning, and external influence. 1. Emotional denial and self-protection. The revelation that he is Natasha's half-brother is deeply traumatic and shattering for Hassan. Accepting the DNA evidence would mean acknowledging that his marriage to Natasha was incestuous and that their child was born from such a union. This truth is so painful and shameful, especially given his cultural and religious background, that Hassan's mind resorts to denial as a form of self-protection. He simply cannot emotionally process or accept the reality, so he chooses to reject it. 2. Influence from his mother and Muslim community. Hassan's mother, Duriya Noor al-Huda, also refuses to believe the DNA evidence and insists that the criminal report is a fabrication. She claims that the religious leader Sheikh Yasser Saif al-Din, Natasha's father, and her own late husband are two different people, and that Hassan and Natasha are not siblings. This denial is reinforced by the broader Muslim community and by a visiting Muslim feminist professor who tells Hassan that Natasha orchestrated the brother-sister story as a conspiracy to defame Islam. These external voices encourage Hassan to reject the DNA results and see himself as a victim of Natasha's supposed plot. 3. Cultural and religious conditioning. In Hassan's worldview, shaped by his upbringing and religious beliefs, such incest is not only a grave sin but also something that God would not allow. This makes it even harder for him to accept the scientific evidence, as it clashes with his deeply held convictions about fate, morality, and divine intervention. He prefers to believe that the DNA evidence is either mistaken, fabricated, or irrelevant, rather than accept a reality that would destroy his sense of self and honor. 4. Blame and deflection. Rather than face the truth, Hassan shifts blame onto Natasha, accusing her of orchestrating the DNA test and the entire situation as part of a conspiracy against him and Islam. He claims that Natasha's real motive is to attack the religion and destroy his life, further justifying his refusal to accept the evidence. Direct evidence from the novel. Like his mother, the son denied everything that has been mentioned in the criminal report about his late father. He refused to accept the bitter fact that he had married his sister, uncovered her nakedness, and had a baby son with her. The Muslim professor told Dr. Hassan it was his Christian wife, Dr. Natasha, who informed the police about the date, place, and time of his second Islamic marriage with his Muslim bride Ilham Salah. From the beginning, she intended to expose him and destroy his life. Because of her, he landed behind bars and sentenced to 17 years prison term without the chance of applying for parole. Believing that his Christian wife, Dr. Natasha, is behind all his misfortunes and calamities, Dr. Hassan asked her never to visit him in prison again. Summary table. Why Dr. Hassan refuses to believe the DNA evidence. Reason description. Emotional denial cannot accept the shame and trauma of incest, denial as self-protection. Community influence. Mother and Muslim community reinforce denial and claim conspiracy. Cultural/religious belief that God would not allow such a thing. DNA evidence clashes with faith. Blame and deflection accuses Natasha of orchestrating a plot to destroy him and Islam. In summary, Dr. Hassan's refusal to believe the DNA evidence is driven by emotional denial, the influence of his mother and community, cultural and religious conditioning, and a need to blame Natasha rather than face a devastating truth about his own life and marriage. Dr. Hassan's mother, Duriya Noor al-Huda, plays a crucial role in reinforcing and sustaining his denial that he and Dr. Natasha are half-brother and half-sister, even after DNA evidence confirms their blood relationship. Here's a summary of her influence. 1. Immediate and absolute denial. Duriya refuses to accept the DNA evidence or the criminal report that reveals her late husband, Sheikh Yasser Saif al-Din, is also Natasha's father. She insists that the religious leader Sheikh Yasser and her own husband are two different people, and that Hassan and Natasha are not siblings. She claims the reports are fabrications and part of a conspiracy against her family. 2. Emotional and cultural pressure. As Hassan's mother, Duriya's opinion carries significant emotional weight. Her steadfast denial provides Hassan with a psychological safe harbor, making it easier for him to reject the painful truth. She appeals to family honor and the need to protect their reputation, reinforcing Hassan's desire to avoid the shame and consequences of accepting the DNA results. 3. Community and religious reinforcement. Daria is not alone in her denial. She is supported by other members of the Muslim community and by a visiting Muslim feminist professor, who also claim the DNA evidence and reports are part of a plot to defame Islam and destroy Hassan's life. This collective denial from his mother and community gives Hassan social validation for his disbelief, making it easier for him to dismiss the scientific evidence as a conspiracy. 4. Instigating legal and social action. Daria goes so far as to threaten legal action against Natasha, accusing her of trying to spread nasty accusations against her late husband and her son. She actively works to discredit Natasha's claims and the DNA evidence in both family and public settings. 5. Sustaining Hassan's psychological defense. By refusing to accept the truth herself and encouraging Hassan to do the same, Daria helps him maintain his denial as a psychological defense mechanism. This allows Hassan to avoid confronting the trauma, shame, and legal/moral consequences of the incestuous relationship. In summary, Hassan's mother, Daria Noor al-Huda, is central to his denial. Her unwavering rejection of the DNA evidence, emotional and cultural pressure, support from the community, and active efforts to discredit Natasha all combine to give Hassan both the justification and the psychological support he needs to refuse the truth about his relationship with Natasha, even in the face of irrefutable scientific proof. Both Dr. Hassan and his mother, Daria Noor al-Huda, repeatedly refer to the story of Sheikh Yasser Saif al-Din, Hassan's father and Natasha's biological father, as a way to deny the DNA evidence and reinforce their family honor. The story of Sheikh Yasser's death and shrine. Sheikh Yasser's death in Sudan. Hassan's mother insists that her late husband, Sheikh Yasser Saif al-Din, also known as Yasser Saif al-Dawla, died in Sudan, not in Canada or Somalia as some reports suggest. She claims he passed away as a revered religious leader in Khartoum. The Great Religious Shrine. After his death, Sheikh Yasser's funeral was attended by a massive crowd, half the populaces of Khartoum city, and he was honored with a state burial, a privilege usually reserved for presidents who die in office. His tomb became a sacred shrine, visited annually by over 1 million Muslims seeking blessings, healing, and miracles. The shrine is described as being as sacred as the Black Kaaba in Mecca or the tomb of the Prophet Muhammad in Medina. People come to the shrine for various reasons: to bless newborns, recover lost items, seek healing, or pray for children. Miraculous reputation. Daria and Hassan recount stories of Sheikh Yasser's miraculous powers. He could fly from city to city without an airplane, jump from tall buildings unharmed, raise the dead, heal the sick, and even fold the earth to travel vast distances in a single step. He was believed to have performed countless miracles both in life and after death, with his shrine serving as a place of pilgrimage and hope for the faithful. Denial of scandal. Daria uses this story to argue that such a revered and holy man could not possibly be the same person accused of sexual crimes or of being Natasha's biological father. She claims the criminal reports are fabrications and that the DNA evidence is part of a conspiracy to defame her family and Islam. Hassan's alignment. Hassan adopts his mother's narrative, insisting that his father is a saint whose shrine is a testament to his righteousness. He refuses to accept any evidence to the contrary, relying on the legend of the shrine and his mother's unwavering belief to shield himself from the painful truth. Direct evidence from the novel. His father also died in Sudan before he married her. He claimed that his late father was a great religious leader in Khartoum. When he expired, his tomb became the shrine of big Muslim saint. His holy shrine is located on top of the tallest mountain in the capital city of Sudan. Sudanese consider the shrine of his father to be the dome of the guardian saint of God on earth, who still sends blessings to them even after his departure from the land of the living and descending to the land of the dead. Every Friday evening, many Muslim women, old and young, visit the sacred dome of the saint of Allah Yasser Saif al-Dawla to seek help or receive blessings from the dead holy man of God. If a woman gives birth to a child, she must take him to the sacred shrine to be blessed. If she loses something valuable, she will go there and ask the buried guardian of Allah to return it to her and punish the thief person who stole it from her. If a member of a family gets sick or meets with a serious car accident and his life is suspended between heaven and earth, his relatives will go to the shrine of the righteous guardian and ask him to save his or her life. A barren woman who cannot bear children will visit the holy mausoleum of the Saint of God every Friday evening until one day the dead guardian will perform a miracle and bless her with a child. If somehow such a barren woman becomes pregnant and in due time gives birth to a child, she will call every person in her neighborhood and slaughter a cow, or a sheep, or a camel. Then all the guests will gather near the holy shrine of the dead saint of Allah Yasser Saif al-Dawla and eat the food of dignity or karama. Therefore, the husband Dr. Hassan told his wife Dr. Natasha that the Muslims of Sudan consider the holy shrine of his late father the saint of Allah Yasser Saif al-Dawla as sacred as the Black Kaaba in the holy city of Mecca or the tomb of the Prophet Muhammad in the lighted city of Medina. In summary, Hassan and his mother used the story of Sheikh Yasser's death in Sudan and his veneration as a saint with a great religious shrine to deny any scandal or wrongdoing. This narrative serves as both a shield against the painful truth of the DNA evidence and a way to preserve family honor and religious prestige in the face of public disgrace. Life of Sheikh Yasser as revealed in the novel Natasha and Her Illegitimate Child in a Muslim Society by Dr. A. Ahmed and the idealized/invented version that Dr. Hassan and his mother, Daria Noor al-Huda, present to themselves and their community. 1. The true life of Sheikh Yasser, as revealed by evidence and Natasha's investigation. Criminal past. Sheikh Yasser Saif al-Din, also known as Yasser Saif al-Dawla, is revealed to have a deeply troubled and criminal history. He was a notorious womanizer, polygamist, and child abuser who committed sexual crimes in both Sudan and Canada. Sexual abuse and incest. He raped Natasha's underage mother, fathered children out of wedlock, and later raped Natasha herself, his own daughter, resulting in a child. He also abandoned his wives and children, leaving a trail of trauma and scandal. Imprisonment and exile. He was convicted in Canada for kidnapping and raping a minor, designated a sexual offender, and imprisoned. After his release, he changed his name and became involved with radical groups. Death in disgrace. Ultimately, he fled to Somalia, joined a terrorist group, and was killed in a brutal feud, dying in disgrace and isolation. His body was mutilated and burned, and he was remembered by those who knew the truth as a criminal and abuser. 2. The invented life of Sheikh Yasser, as told by Hassan and his mother. Saintly reputation. Hassan and Daria insist that Sheikh Yasser died in Sudan as a revered religious leader. They claim he was a holy man, a saint of Allah, whose funeral was attended by thousands, and who was honored with a state burial. Miraculous powers. They attribute to him miraculous abilities, flying, healing, raising the dead, and folding the earth. His tomb is said to be a sacred shrine, visited by over 1 million Muslims annually, where people seek blessings, healing, and miracles. Symbol of family honor. For Hassan and his mother, Sheikh Yasser's shrine is as sacred as the Kaaba or the Prophet's tomb. They use this legend to deny any scandal, insisting that such a revered figure could not possibly be guilty of the crimes Natasha and the evidence describe. Denial of scandal. They reject all criminal reports and DNA evidence as fabrications or conspiracies, maintaining that Sheikh Yasser's legacy is one of holiness, not shame. Aspect true Sheikh Yasser invented/idealized Sheikh Yasser. Criminal record convicted sexual offender, rapist, polygamist, child abuser, terrorist. No criminal record, revered as a saint and religious leader. Family relations fathered children through rape and incest, abandoned wives and children loving patriarch, source of family honor. Death died in disgrace in Somalia, body mutilated and burned died in Sudan, honored with state funeral, tomb became a holy shrine. Legacy remembered by victims as a criminal and abuser, remembered by family/community as a miracle worker and saint. Community impact source of trauma, scandal, and legal battles source of blessings, miracles, and pilgrimage. Response to scandal evidence-based exposure, DNA confirmation, public disgrace, total denial, claims of conspiracy, reliance on legend and reputation. Summary. The true life of Sheikh Yasser is one of abuse, crime, and disgrace, revealed through evidence, DNA tests, and the suffering of his victims. In contrast, the version invented by Hassan and his mother is a mythic narrative of sainthood and miracles, used to protect family honor and deny painful truths. This contrast highlights the power of denial, legend, and social pressure in shaping personal and communal memory, even in the face of overwhelming evidence. Site turn 10 fetch_file. The motive behind the feminist newspaper article titled, "Oops, She Did It Again," in Natasha and Her Illegitimate Child in a Muslim Society by Dr. A. Ahmed is primarily to discredit and attack Dr. Natasha's credibility, motives, and activism, while also defending Islam and the Muslim community from what the author perceives as a deliberate campaign of defamation. Here's a breakdown of the motives as described in the novel. 1. Retaliation for public defeat and personal grudge. The article is written by a visiting Muslim feminist professor who has previously debated Dr. Natasha and suffered public defeat. The author harbors a deep-seated personal animosity toward Natasha, viewing her as a bitter opponent and enemy of Islam. 1. The article's title, "Oops, She Did It Again," is meant to mock Natasha and suggest a pattern of intentional scandal and conspiracy. 2. Defense of Islam and Muslim feminist identity. The author aims to defend Islam and the Muslim community from Natasha's accusations and activism, which are seen as attacks on the faith and its followers. The article claims that Natasha's stories of incest, abuse, and misogyny are fabrications or exaggerations designed to defame Islam and fuel Islamophobia. 3. Accusation of conspiracy and fabrication. The article accuses Natasha of orchestrating her relationships and scandals, including her unwitting incestuous marriages, as part of a deliberate plot to create sensational stories that will damage the reputation of Islam and Muslims in the West. The author suggests that Natasha intentionally sought out her half-brother, married him, and then publicized the relationship to create another scandal, hence the phrase, "She did it again." 4. Undermining Natasha's credibility. The article questions the authenticity of Natasha's research, the stoning video, and her personal narrative, suggesting that she fabricates evidence and manipulates situations for fame and to further an anti-Islamic agenda. The author claims to have obtained information from Dr. Hassan in prison, further attempting to legitimize the accusations against Natasha. 5. Rallying the Muslim community. By publishing the article in a widely read newspaper and on social media, the author seeks to rally the Muslim community and feminist allies to reject Natasha's claims, defend their faith, and pressure institutions to distance themselves from her. Direct evidence from the novel. One of the outspoken Islamic feminists drafted a long article and published it in one of the most popular newspapers in the city of Toronto. She titled her university article, "Oops, She Did It Again." She accused Professor Dr. Natasha of intentionally traveling to Saudi Arabia, purposely falling in love with her half-brother Dr. Hassan, cunningly beguiling him, enticing him through her beauty, luring him through the promise of taking him to Canada, and deceptively marrying him because she wanted to defame the religion of Islam. The Muslim professor concluded her newspaper report by stating that she had obtained her information about the conspiracies of Professor Natasha from her indicted Muslim husband Dr. Hassan Yasser Saif al-Dawla when she visited him in prison. Summary table. Motives behind the article.
Motive description.
Personal grudge retaliation for public defeat in debates with Natasha. Defense of Islam protecting Islam and Muslim feminists from perceived defamation. Accusation of conspiracy claiming Natasha orchestrates scandals to attack Islam. Undermining credibility questioning Natasha's research evidence, and personal narrative. Community mobilization rallying Muslims and feminists to reject Natasha and her activism. In summary, the feminist article Oops, She Did It Again is motivated by a mix of personal animosity, defense of Islam, a desire to discredit Natasha, and an effort to mobilize the community against what the author sees as a campaign of fabricated scandals and anti-Muslim activism. Natasha's public response to the feminist article Oops, She Did It Again is characterized by resilience, clarity, and a refusal to be silenced or shamed. Summary of Natasha's public response. Firm denial of fabrication and conspiracy. Natasha publicly rejects the article's accusations that she fabricated her life story, orchestrated incestuous relationships, or intentionally created scandals to defame Islam. She stands by the authenticity of her experiences and research, emphasizing that her work is based on lived reality, documented evidence, and personal trauma, not on any anti-Islamic agenda. Defense of her advocacy and mission. She reaffirms her commitment to exposing abuses against women in Muslim societies, arguing that attempts to discredit her are part of a broader pattern of silencing victims and whistleblowers. Natasha insists that her activism is motivated by a desire for justice and change, not by personal vendetta or a quest for notoriety. Challenge to her critics. Natasha challenges the motives of her critics, especially those who claim to speak for Muslim women while denying or minimizing the realities of abuse. She points out that such attacks often come from individuals or groups invested in maintaining the status quo, and that their denial only perpetuates harm. Turn 10 Fetch and evidence. She invites open debate and scrutiny, encouraging others to examine the evidence, listen to survivors, and engage in honest discussion rather than resorting to personal attacks or conspiracy theories. Natasha provides documentation and references to support her claims, reinforcing her credibility and solidarity. Rather than retreating, Natasha uses the controversy to empower other women and survivors to speak out. She frames the backlash as proof of the urgent need for reform and as a testament to the power of truth-telling in the face of intimidation. In summary, Natasha's public response to the article is to stand her ground, defend her integrity and mission, and turn the attempted discrediting into an opportunity to highlight the importance of her advocacy. She refuses to be silenced by smear campaigns and continues to call for justice, evidence-based debate, and solidarity among women and survivors. Here's how Dr. Hassan falls in love with Ilham, and who she is before meeting him. Who is Ilham before meeting Dr.
Hassan?
Background: Ilham is a Sudanese Muslim woman living in Canada. Before meeting Dr. Hassan, she is married to a polygamist and abusive Muslim husband in Edmonton. Her husband has 4 wives, and Ilham is one of them. Victim of abuse, Ilham suffers severe domestic violence. Her husband beats her almost daily. Despite the abuse, she never dares to call the police, as is common in her community. Turning point: one day, her husband's violence escalates to the point that neighbors call the police. He is arrested, hospitalized, and eventually imprisoned for his abuse. Ilham then files for divorce and is legally freed after 15 years of marriage and raising 5 children with him. Desire for change: after her divorce, Ilham seeks a new beginning and hopes to find a better Muslim husband who will treat her with respect and kindness. How Dr. Hassan falls in love with Ilham. First encounter: Dr. Hassan meets Ilham at a Sudanese wedding in Calgary. At this point, Hassan is already struggling in his marriage with Natasha and is feeling isolated within the Sudanese community. Attraction and emotional connection: Ilham's physical appearance, notably her spear-like big breasts and extra-large backside, as described in the novel, and her vulnerability as a recent divorcee attract Hassan. He is drawn to her both physically and emotionally, especially as she is looking for a new start after escaping an abusive marriage. Shared cultural and religious background: both are Sudanese Muslims, and Ilham's willingness to be a second wife, as allowed in Islamic law, appeals to Hassan, who is under pressure from his mother and Sudanese friends to take a Muslim wife and restore his honor. Secret relationship: Their relationship develops through phone calls, online communication, and secret meetings. Ilham refuses to have sex with Hassan before marriage, insisting on a halal, religiously sanctioned, union. Polygamous marriage. Eventually, Hassan and Ilham arrange a secret Islamic marriage with the help of a local imam, while Hassan is still legally married to Natasha. This marriage is not registered with Canadian authorities due to the illegality of polygamy, but it is recognized within their religious and cultural community. In summary, Ilham is a Sudanese Muslim woman who escapes an abusive polygamous marriage and seeks a new life in Canada. She meets Dr. Hassan at a community event, and their shared background, her vulnerability, and mutual attraction lead to a secret polygamous relationship. Hassan is drawn to Ilham as a way to fulfill cultural expectations and find emotional and physical connection outside his troubled marriage with Natasha. Here is a summary of Ilham's life after marrying Dr. Hassan. Ilham's life after marrying Dr.
Hassan.
1. Secret polygamous marriage. Ilham marries Dr. Hassan as his second wife in a secret Islamic ceremony, since polygamy is illegal in Canada. Their marriage is recognized religiously but not by Canadian law, so it must be kept hidden from authorities and from Hassan's first wife, Natasha. 2. Continued vulnerability and instability. Despite her hopes for a better life, Ilham's situation remains precarious. She is still a single mother of 5 children from her previous abusive marriage and must juggle her responsibilities while maintaining secrecy about her new marriage. Ilham's relationship with Hassan is marked by distance, as they live in different cities, she in Edmonton, he in Calgary/Toronto, and their contact is often limited to phone calls, online communication, and occasional secret visits. 3. Emotional and social challenges. Ilham faces emotional challenges as Hassan is unable to provide her with the stability and public recognition she desires. She must accept being a hidden wife, sharing her husband with another woman, and living with the uncertainty of his legal troubles and divided loyalties. She is also exposed to the risk of legal consequences if their polygamous marriage is discovered by Canadian authorities. 4. Legal crisis and betrayal. When Hassan is arrested for practicing polygamy and for assaulting a police officer, Ilham's life is thrown into turmoil. During the police raid on their wedding, she is questioned and, in her fear, distances herself from Hassan to avoid legal repercussions. Ilham seeks religious validation from local imams who assure her that, in the eyes of God, she is Hassan's lawful wife. 5. Desperate measures and sacrifice. Determined to help Hassan get out of jail, Ilham turns to her former Arab sugar daddy, an elderly wealthy man with whom she previously had a transactional relationship. She agrees to his demands, including a temporary enjoyment marriage, mudde, and sexual favors, in exchange for his financial help to bail Hassan out and hire a lawyer. This act is both a sacrifice and a humiliation for Ilham, who is forced to compromise her dignity and values to support her new husband's sight. 6. Unfulfilled hopes and further hardship. Despite her efforts, Ilham's hopes for a happy marriage with Hassan are dashed. After Hassan is released on bail, a domestic incident involving Ilham's attempt to smoke her body, a Sudanese beauty ritual, leads to another police intervention, public exposure of her nudity, and Hassan's further imprisonment for assaulting a police officer. Ilham is left devastated, having sacrificed much for a marriage that brings her neither security nor happiness. She is unable to consummate her marriage with Hassan, and he is sentenced to a lengthy prison term. Summary table. Ilham's life after marrying Hassan. Aspect description. Marriage status secret, religiously recognized polygamous marriage, not legal in Canada. Emotional state hopeful at first, but faces disappointment, humiliation, and instability. Social/legal risks must hide marriage, faces risk of legal action and social stigma. Sacrifice engages in transactional relationship to bail Hassan out of jail. Outcome marriage unconsummated, Hassan imprisoned, Ilham left alone and disillusioned. In summary, Ilham's life after marrying Dr. Hassan is marked by secrecy, sacrifice, and disappointment. Despite her hopes for a new beginning, she faces ongoing hardship, legal risk, and emotional pain, ultimately finding herself alone and unfulfilled after Hassan's imprisonment. Dr. Hassan's legal troubles and imprisonment unfold as follows. Summary of Dr. Hassan's legal troubles and imprisonment. 1. Secret polygamous marriage. While still legally married to Natasha, Dr. Hassan secretly marries Ilham in a religious, Islamic ceremony, as polygamy is permitted in Islamic law but illegal in Canada. The marriage is not registered with Canadian authorities, but it is recognized within their religious and cultural community. 2. Arrest for polygamy. During the secret wedding ceremony with Ilham, Canadian police raid the event. Hassan is unable to provide proof that he has divorced Natasha, confirming he is still legally married. He is arrested and charged with practicing polygamy, bigamy, which is a criminal offense in Canada and punishable by imprisonment, a fine, or both. 3. Additional charges: assaulting a police officer. During the police intervention at Ilham's apartment, after a domestic incident involving Ilham's beauty ritual, Hassan assaults a police officer who uncovers Ilham's nudity. He is charged with assaulting a police officer and causing bodily harm. The injured officer later dies from his wounds, leading to an even more severe charge. 4. Court proceedings and sentencing. Hassan is initially sentenced to 5 years in prison for assaulting a police officer. After the officer's death, his sentence is increased to 15 years. He also faces up to 2 years imprisonment and/or a fine of up to $10,000 for the polygamy offense. 5. Consequences. Hassan's arrest and conviction lead to the collapse of his marriage with Natasha, social ostracism, and the loss of all remaining support from both the Sudanese and Canadian communities. He is left to serve a lengthy prison sentence, isolated and facing the consequences of his choices, including the breakdown of his family and professional life. Summary table: Dr. Hassan's legal troubles. Offense details. Polygamy/bigamy: secretly marries Ilham while still married to Natasha, arrested at wedding. Assault on police officer: assaults officer during police intervention, officer later dies. Sentencing 5 years for assault, increased to 15 after officer's death, up to 2 years for polygamy. Social consequences: marriage breakdown, social ostracism, loss of support, professional ruin. In summary, Dr. Hassan's legal troubles begin with his secret polygamous marriage to Ilham, escalate with an assault on a police officer, and culminate in a lengthy prison sentence and total personal and social downfall. Here is a comparison of Dr. Hassan's polygamous marriage in Canada with the polygamy Natasha witnessed while living with her relatives in Sudan. Polygamy in Canada. Dr.
Hassan Ilham.
Secret and illegal. Dr. Hassan's polygamous marriage to Ilham is conducted in secret because polygamy is illegal in Canada. The marriage is recognized only within their religious and cultural community, not by Canadian law. Hidden and isolated. Ilham must remain a hidden wife, and the relationship is marked by secrecy, fear of legal repercussions, and lack of public recognition or stability. Legal consequences. The secrecy is ultimately exposed, leading to Hassan's arrest for bigamy/polygamy, public scandal, and a lengthy prison sentence. The marriage brings neither security nor happiness to Ilham, who is left alone and unsupported after Hassan's imprisonment. Fragmented family. The polygamous arrangement in Canada results in emotional distance, instability, and the breakdown of both Hassan's marriage to Natasha and his new marriage to Ilham. Polygamy in Sudan. Natasha's relatives and neighbors. Socially and legally accepted. In Sudan, polygamy is both legal and socially normalized. Natasha's relative's neighbor is openly married to 3 wives and has 21 children, with the entire community aware and accepting of the arrangement. Open rivalry and suffering. The wives live together in a state of rivalry, jealousy, and frequent conflict, often fighting over the husband's attention and resources. The children experience confusion and neglect, and the wives endure emotional and psychological suffering. Cultural rituals and gender roles. The wives undergo painful beauty rituals and self-mortification to please their husband, and their lives are defined by strict gender roles and lack of autonomy. The husband's authority is unquestioned, and the wives have little recourse or independence. Community structure. Polygamy is woven into the fabric of daily life, with extended families and neighbors involved in managing disputes and maintaining the household structure. The arrangement is public, but it perpetuates systemic gender oppression and emotional hardship for women and children. Comparison table. Aspect polygamy in Canada, Hassan and Ilham. Polygamy in Sudan, Natasha's relatives/neighbors. Legal status illegal, secret, not recognized by law legal, public, socially and legally accepted. Social visibility hidden, isolated, risk of arrest open, normalized, community involved. Emotional impact instability, secrecy, lack of support, collapse rivalry, jealousy, emotional suffering, normalized trauma. Women's status, hidden wife, no rights or security public wives, but little autonomy or recourse. Family structure fragmented, unstable, leads to breakdown large, complex, managed by community, but rife with conflict. Outcome legal disaster, imprisonment, isolation ongoing emotional hardship, normalized gender oppression. Summary. In Canada, polygamy is criminalized, forcing relationships like Hassan and Ilham's into secrecy, instability, and eventual legal disaster. The arrangement brings neither security nor happiness and ends in public scandal and imprisonment. In Sudan, polygamy is openly practiced and woven into the social fabric, but it perpetuates rivalry, emotional suffering, and systemic gender oppression for women and children. The arrangement is public and normalized, but still deeply harmful. In both contexts, Natasha observes that polygamy, whether hidden and illegal or open and accepted, results in suffering, instability, and the subjugation of women. Though the mechanisms and consequences differ according to the legal and cultural environment, the community reactions to polygamy in Sudan and Canada are sharply contrasting, shaped by legal, cultural, and social norms. Community reactions to polygamy in Sudan. Social acceptance. Polygamy is both legal and widely accepted in Sudanese society. It is seen as a normal part of life, especially among religious and traditional families. Men openly have multiple wives, and the community is accustomed to large, polygamous households. Normalization of rivalry and suffering. While polygamy is accepted, the emotional and psychological suffering of wives, rivalry, jealousy, and frequent conflict is normalized and often dismissed as an inevitable part of marriage. The community expects women to endure these hardships in silence. Community involvement. Extended families and neighbors are often involved in managing disputes and maintaining the household structure. Polygamy is woven into the social fabric, and the community plays a role in upholding the system and mediating conflicts. Religious justification. Polygamy is justified through religious teachings, with references to the Quran and the Prophet Muhammad's example. This religious backing reinforces its legitimacy and discourages open criticism. Community reactions to polygamy in Canada. Legal prohibition and social stigma. Polygamy is illegal in Canada and is viewed by the broader society as a violation of both the law and social norms. When discovered, it leads to public scandal, legal prosecution, and social ostracism. Secrecy and isolation. Because of its illegality, polygamous relationships are conducted in secret. Wives like Ilham must remain hidden, and the relationships lack public recognition or support. There is a constant fear of exposure and legal consequences. Community division. Within the Sudanese and some other Muslim immigrant communities, there may be some sympathy or understanding for polygamy based on cultural or religious background. However, even within these communities, there is often tension, gossip, and division, especially when polygamy leads to legal trouble or public attention. Negative consequences. When polygamy is exposed, as in Dr. Hassan's case, it results in arrest, imprisonment, and the collapse of family and community support. The broader Canadian community reacts with condemnation, and the individuals involved face isolation and hardship. Site Summary Table, Community Reactions. Aspect Sudan, Canada. Legal status: legal, religiously justified; illegal, criminal offense. Social attitude: accepted, normalized, part of tradition; stigmatized, condemned, leads to scandal. Community role: involved in managing and supporting polygamous households; divided, secrecy, fear, and lack of support. Impact on women: suffering; normalized, rivalry; expected, isolation, lack of recognition, emotional hardship. Consequences: ongoing emotional hardship, but system persists; arrest, imprisonment, family breakdown, social ostracism. In summary, in Sudan, polygamy is openly practiced and socially accepted, despite the emotional cost to women. In Canada, it is illegal and stigmatized, leading to secrecy, legal consequences, and social isolation for those involved. The contrast highlights how law and culture shape community responses and the lived realities of polygamous families. Cite the emotional impact of polygamy on women in both Sudan and Canada is profound, though the context and expression of suffering differ. Sudan: emotional impact on women. Rivalry and jealousy. Women in polygamous marriages in Sudan experience constant rivalry and jealousy. The wives compete for the husband's attention, affection, and resources, leading to frequent quarrels and even physical fights. Site of autonomy. Wives have little control over their lives or bodies. Their daily routines and even their beauty rituals are dictated by the need to please their husband and outdo their co-wives. Emotional suffering. The normalization of polygamy does not lessen the pain. Women endure emotional neglect, insecurity, and a sense of being undervalued or replaceable. Their identities are often reduced to their roles as wives and mothers within a competitive household. Suppressed solidarity. Instead of supporting each other, co-wives are often pitted against one another, eroding potential female solidarity and deepening isolation. Resignation. Many women accept their suffering as fate, internalizing the belief that enduring hardship is part of their duty as wives. Some express their pain privately, while others become emotionally numb. Site Canada: emotional impact on women. Secrecy and isolation. Because polygamy is illegal in Canada, women like Ilham must live as hidden wives, lacking public recognition or legal protection. This secrecy breeds anxiety, loneliness, and a sense of illegitimacy. Instability and fear. The constant risk of exposure and legal consequences creates ongoing stress. The relationship is unstable, and the woman's position is precarious. She can be abandoned or left unsupported at any time. Unfulfilled hopes. Women may enter polygamous marriages hoping for love, security, or a fresh start, but often find themselves disappointed, unsupported, and emotionally neglected, especially when the husband is arrested or the relationship collapses. Humiliation and sacrifice. In desperate situations, women may be forced to compromise their dignity or values, as Ilham does, seeking help from a former sugar daddy to bail Hassan out of jail, leading to further emotional trauma. Lack of community support. Unlike in Sudan, there is no broader community structure to normalize or support polygamous arrangements. Instead, women face social stigma, isolation, and the collapse of their family life if the relationship is discovered. Summary table. Emotional impact of polygamy on women. Aspect Sudan, Canada. Social context: legal, normalized, community involved; illegal, secret, isolated. Emotional state: jealousy, rivalry, resignation, emotional neglect; anxiety, fear, loneliness, humiliation, instability. Support system: community involvement, but solidarity suppressed; no support, risk of abandonment and legal trouble. Coping mechanisms: resignation, numbness, private suffering; secrecy, sacrifice, emotional withdrawal. Outcome: ongoing suffering, normalized trauma, suppressed solidarity; disappointment, trauma, collapse of family and support. In summary, Polygamy causes deep emotional suffering for women in both Sudan and Canada. In Sudan, the pain is normalized and woven into daily life, manifesting as rivalry, insecurity, and resignation. In Canada, the suffering is compounded by secrecy, illegality, and isolation, leaving women unsupported and vulnerable to trauma and disappointment.